You may be asking, why is a baseball podcast talking about other sports? Well, guess what? It's because the two of us are sports fans, and we like and respect all four of the American sports leagues and follow them.
Yeah,
so,
fuck you. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. People that sit here and have all these like tribalism over the different sports leagues. Guess what? We just want to have fun. We like sports.
It's a new century,
we're
bitch.
Here to talk about it. Exactly. It's a new age, baby. So let's just jump right in. I love the NBA and MLB. My big two. NHL and MLB are Sean's big two. So I'm going to be guiding us through this episode, and Sean will be asking questions, giving his opinions, and it'll be, and we're going to try to set it up so it's good for both people more into the NBA and people less into the NBA.
So I want to preface this as well, is that I kind of started paying attention to the NBA at all about last season when I was living with Zach, and he would just watch so many Bulls games every day. I mean, he'd just be talking about the Bulls all day. I was like, all right, you know what? I got to pay attention to the NBA somewhat so I can still have conversations.
And then we watched the playoffs together also last year.
And I really enjoyed kind of getting to know the league. And I will say, and we're going to get to it later, but I want to leave this note right here since it's relevant. Last year, Zach was a huge Milwaukee fan.
Okay. It's funny you say that. So that was something really fun last year that made me love basketball even more, is because I was living with Sean, and he, like I said, like hadn't really been that exposed to basketball. So came time for the playoffs. Bulls were eliminated last year. Unfortunately, did not make the playoffs. But so I got to like introduce him to all these narratives, and we kind of picked teams together. We were rooting, huge Milwaukee fans. We were rooting for the Hawks the entire time until the Bucks beat the Hawks. Going into the finals, we rooted for the Bucks over the Suns, but we were rooting for the Hawks. Okay, the Hawks.
All right, no, it's true. It's true. It was a Trae Young household, and then all of a sudden it was a Giannis household. As well.
Yeah, suddenly. I mean, sure, in the finals who I was going to root for going in, but as soon as just the way he was playing, Giannis, and the Bucks, they were so likable. Funny enough, we'll get to that later. Yeah. So we're gonna start in the East. We're gonna start with the 1-8 matchup. The first seeded Miami Heat are playing the 8-seeded Atlanta Hawks. So Miami is probably, many people are saying, the least talked about one seed in recent memory and maybe in NBA history. You know, they've just been, and the reason why is they've just been reliably good this season. They've been a team hit with the injury bug. A lot of teams have been hit with the injury bug. They've been hit with the injury bug pretty heavily. And so they've still remained reliable. And they, in an Eastern Conference that was so tight and the seeding was so unsure, they locked up the 1 seed, actually.
Yeah.
Not officially locked it up, but within without
everybody kind of knew that you got through everybody else. And then if you wanted the 1 seed, you had to get through Miami.
Yeah,
there was a clear difference the whole season. Even though I'm not a huge basketball, I knew that there was a clear difference between Miami and the rest of the East contenders.
Yeah, so some people maybe also shade them because they drop sometimes random games for no good reason. Like the Philadelphia 76ers were trying to lose a game. They sat both James Harden and Joel Embiid in Miami. Miami had all the starters, and Tyrese Maxey had like his best game of the season and just destroyed them. And so they just lose random games, and they'll lose to like rebuilding teams randomly. But normally they're pretty consistent. They earn that 1 seed. And so the Hawks, the 8 seed, despite a truly disappointing season after last year, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals and took 2 games from the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. They've had a terrible season, and they finished 9th seed. Ooh, bad. But they remained confident and knew they would be in the playoffs. They fought their way hard through the play-in, although it did cost them their starting center, Clint Capella, in the final game, eliminating Cleveland.
Fuck you, Cavaliers.
Yeah, I know. Tough L. So that's a big blow to them, but they seem pretty confident. But maybe that changed because today in game 1, the Heat just smashed the Hawks. But Trae Young uses that energy. The Knicks had a good showing last year against the Hawks in round 1, and that just made him get better.
As far as this is going to go, I think that Miami's just going to slaughter the Hawks. They don't have the magic they did last year. Because like you said, we were kind of following them. And that Hawks team, while it was, Trae Young was really the biggest star in all of them. And he still is the biggest star to all of them. But I think that's the problem. is that it's Trae Young and a bunch of chuckle fucks, you know.
Yeah,
So
I mean they are a really young team too. So
mm-hmm.
so they'll be here for a while. Last year,
Yeah.
people were saying they were a year early.
Yeah.
Maybe they were 2 years early, actually, because this year wasn't that great. But I agree. I think it's Miami's just going to handle it pretty well. Maybe Atlanta can pick up a game. But.
Yeah, and I think Miami also is feeling a little bit of pressure that the Hawks aren't going to be feeling, being that young team that doesn't need to be winning this series right now for their own legacy. But Miami sees that, you know, Celtics stocks going up, Philly stocks going up, Brooklyn, maybe they figured it out, maybe they didn't, who knows. But I feel like in the narrative what the Eastern Conference is in basketball, I feel like the Heat felt that they weren't being talked about, and that I think that if they get bounced in the first round or even the second round, I think people are going to say like, oh well, you know, Miami just a fake contender, you know, even though that would be an insane stooge take to have. But
I agree completely. And it's funny you mentioned again that how they have a different level of pressure because of the Hawks' youngness. The Heat are pretty old. I mean, they have a lot of their depth guys are young, or their bench guys. I mean, like Tyler Hero, for example, is of course very young. Max Strus, decently young. But I mean, their stars, Jimmy Butler, old in his 30s, and Kyle Lowry, 37. So, but Heat should be able to handle it. The next series we have is the 4-seeded 76ers, Philadelphia 76ers. Sean and I got a lot of, I don't want to say love for the 76ers, but a lot of like appreciation for like we don't support
that's
them,
the word.
But
we don't support them, we don't respect them, but we do appreciate them.
Yeah, we more often than not, almost always actually root against them, but we appreciate them and we really enjoy their presence in the league. So the 4-seeded 76ers going against the 5-seeded Toronto Raptors.
This is a brutal fan series for me, being a Boston fan. I have no idea who to. It's just like two despicable cities, and I'm just like, ugh, these fucking guys.
Yeah. I mean, I actually really like the Raptors. They're probably in the East, they're probably my second favorite team. I don't really know why. This year, that's pretty new to this year. I used to not really like them. Yeah, certainly not the Bucks. The Bucks were one of my least favorite this year. But the Raptors, I use my friend's league pass. Sorry, Adam Silver, but I use my friend's league pass. And I would just at the end of the night when Bulls games were over, or if the Bulls weren't playing, I would watch just kind of close games. I would try to do my own like NFL red zone. I'd jump between them. And man, I found myself watching the Raptors more than any other team naturally like that. And I grew a really good liking for them because of that. So the 76ers whooped the Raptors in the first game of the series. That's already happened in the playoff series. But they also hurt 3 Raptors in the process, which, you know, is tough. But I think, well, let me give you a little more background on these teams first. The 76ers were the 1 seed last year and just fell apart in the playoffs on a national stage. And their secondary star, Ben Simmons, just had a mental breakdown in front of the whole country as a result of that. And this year they were the 4th seed, but they were on tiebreakers. They were tied in games win for the 2nd seed with the Bucks and the Celtics. It was a 3-way tie. I mean, they were trying to lose. They originally were like, they could have gotten the 2nd seed pretty handily. They were so scared of the Nets, who destroyed them this year on the national stage, that they wanted to tank. And this year was really just characterized by drama surrounding Ben Simmons and James Harden. The Raptors, on the other hand, had a really great year. They had a rough first third of the year, but their last 51 games, they surprised everyone, and they've been really great. Many people have them potentially upsetting the series, actually, especially since Philly's key defensive piece, Matthias Thybulle, will be ineligible to play games in Canada. But now a lot of that rests on injuries because, like I said, in the first game of the series, which Philly won handily, 3 Raptors got injured in that game. But one will be back for sure next game. The other 2.
So, Zach, let me ask you a question. Let me tell me if you agree with this statement. So, at my work, we have a lot of we have a little bit of a gambling environment going with me and the other storekeepers and Zamboni drivers. And the one thing I said to all my guys at work that were thinking about betting on this series was, listen, Philly's going to win the first game. because they can't blow a lead if they don't have it. And that's what
like
I think is
that.
going to be happening in this series. And it might be a reverse Toronto where Toronto comes back and wins a series from the end. But I can't imagine Philly not blowing this somehow in some way, just for the whole narrative they've had for the last 2 years. All this bullshit. They're a Philly team. They're going to lose one game. They're going to boo James Harden, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the 76ers will probably win this game. But I think the Raptors stand a really good series. But I think the Raptors stand a really good chance of upsetting it, and I hope so. Because all it's going to come down to is if the 76ers feel confident the whole series, they'll win it no problem. But if they feel threatened at any point, it's over. Harden historically is the biggest playoff choker in the NBA. He does not perform when it's clutch, and he's suddenly playing in the environment where you have to be the most grade A performer all the time.
Or you just get absolutely shellacked. Yeah.
How is this dude that has I hate to say it, but a pretty big ego and really is out for himself. He's a great ball player. Don't get me wrong. James Harden is, but he's burned every previous team he's been on. And how's he going to take it when that first boo comes his way from Philly fans and he's at home and he hears the whole arena booing him? I think if for a guy that breaks down in the playoffs.
Yeah. We'll see. But anyway, enough about these guys. Now on to the meat series.
So the Bucks and the Bulls this year. Well, let's start with the Bucks. The Bucks are reigning champions, and they are the Vegas favorites to come out of the East. They are just second to the Phoenix Suns to win the whole thing, according to Vegas. And they simply are an incredible and hugely well-rounded team. They wouldn't have won the championship last year, and they team over years and years and years to do this. And now they're in their window, and they are really good. They have arguably the best player in the NBA right now in Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's either him or KD. And so they're looking sharp. The Bulls have had a really up and down year. They going into the season, they were being widely projected to finish in the 9th seed to 11th seed, or 9th in standings to 11th in standings in the East. And many people, like ESPN, had the Bulls missing the play-in even. But ultimately, the Bulls were in first place for almost 2 months of the season in the East. They did incredible, but injuries were abound. Granted, a lot of teams dealt with injuries, but for most of the season, I don't know how it ended exactly, but I know for the majority of the season, the Bulls led the league in expected minutes lost. So players so not like Kawhi Leonard, who we knew was going to be out the whole year, of expected minutes lost to injury. So ended up finishing in 6th seed because they kind of couldn't really deal with that well and couldn't kind of rebuild their team as the pieces even came back. A lot of them.
I think that you said at one point that every single Bulls starter had dealt with an injury at some point this season. Correct?
Yeah. So with COVID, granted, I think most of the league got COVID. The Bulls were statistically hit the hardest by COVID, which is also why we're the only team that en masse had games postponed. Other teams had one-off games postponed or two-off games. We are the only team that did in mass. And so, so every Bulls starter did have an injury this season. Of our top 6 guys, the majority of the season, we only would have 3 of them at a time. But ultimately, the last month of the season, we had most of our guys, but we still couldn't really perform to the way we had before. But I still think we exceeded expectations. Also, these two teams have hated each other this year. Grayson Allen, famous dirty player since college. In NCAA, he was known as the dirtiest player. In NBA, it's continued. He had a dirty foul that injured Alex Caruso, the Bulls player, and had him out for 2 months because he broke his wrist. And these teams have gone at each other physically and brutally each game since. And so the first game happened today, shortly before we started recording, and people were expecting it to be 4 straight blowouts. Bucks sweep. But in this first game, the Bulls showed they are here to play. They led for a good portion of the third. And while they did end up losing by 6 points, they put up a really good fight, and they had a lot of issues with fouls down the stretch. And so this game actually really could have gone either way. And it was really close to being a Bulls victory to start.
So So for me, looking at this series, one, I don't agree with people saying that the Bulls are the Bucks are going to be the favorite to get out of this series, and I'll tell you why. Is that I watching games this season noticed that the Bucks, like the Heat, sometimes will just drop games to like whatever teams, and they are this season, in my opinion, very unclutch. Games that they've kind of like gone into saying like, "Oh, we got to win this game," then that come out. I don't know if the Bulls are going to be able to pounce on that and be able to make this series work just because of all the issues they've been having, not because of the skill or the quality of players on the team, but just, you get hit one too many times and you just can't play the way you want to. Now, I think the Bulls can pull one out of their ass and maybe win. Yeah, I think so. They could, but I would definitely give the edge to Milwaukee, as I think would most Bulls fans.
Yeah.
However, this is going to be a really good series to watch, though. No matter who wins, it's going to be a good series to watch. And I think today's game definitely put that into perspective, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, these games are going to be pretty aggressive. If you're interested in good defense, at least if today was anything to show, I mean, the final score, neither team had above 100. And that's the Bucks. I mean, the reigning NBA champions didn't score over 100. And the Bulls didn't even score 90. So these are good defensive lockdown games. Aggressive stuff. Next up, this is good for all the Boston fans. We have the second-seeded Celtics against the seventh-seeded Nets coming out of the play-in. Maybe the best seventh seed to ever be in a seventh seed in any sport ever. I don't know, but that's
fucking
totally
dog
possible.
Shit. They're a dog shit organization and a dog shit team.
Well, we'll get into that. You can see Sean's opinion. So the Celtics have had an incredible season. They had a shockingly terrible start. Many Celtics fans and much of the national media wanted them to sell at the deadline and break the team apart. They declared the rebuild had failed. Well, it wasn't even a rebuild. They've just been contending for a while. They declared it failed, though. It's time for a rebuild.
But then 2022 comes around.
2022 comes around. Since January, they have been the best team in the NBA in the second half of the season. They, I believe, had the biggest record comeback in history with what their record was the first half of the season versus what it improved in the second half of the season. They had won 24 games and only lost 4 or 6 or something like that. It was incredible.
Jason Tatum is now tied with Larry Bird for the most 50-point games in Celtics history.
That's insane. That's huge.
Which you got to think Jason Tatum is great, but he also hasn't been playing on the Celtics that long.
He's young,
and he's already broken the fucking record.
Yeah, it's incredible. and I mean, what's carried them to this comeback is their league leading defense. They have by every metric the best defense in the league, which has carried them to second seed. And so it's going to be interesting. But I mean,
which will be interesting about Kyrie and the Nets. And this Nets team, the one thing I know is that the blockbuster trade this year between Philly and Brooklyn, essentially both teams got a whole new team at the deadline. So this isn't even the same Brooklyn really as the beginning of the season.
Yeah, so Brooklyn, they have had a pretty wild year. It's been a drama-filled year. Kyrie can play most of the season because he's unvaccinated. He can play home games for up until the very end of the season. And then James Harden didn't want to be there. They had drama surrounding him. They traded him for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond. Low-key, Seth Curry and Andre Drummond were really good pickups that were super underrated. I mean, Andre Drummond was all NBA before. Seth Curry, super underrated shooter. Obviously, I mean, his brother is one of the greatest shooter of all time. I mean, he's pretty underrated too, though. Seth Curry's underrated. But so, I mean, despite the Nets being the 7th seed, you cannot count them out. They have Kyrie Irving, who is a top 10 scorer all time in NBA history, and who's one of the best scorers ever. And they have KD, who is arguably, him or Giannis, the best player in the league right now. So in any game, either one of those guys can give you 50 points. The problem is everyone was saying they don't really have good defense. But in the first game played today, that game was insanely tight. And they did play good defense. It was won by the Celtics by 1 point on a buzzer beater layup. So this is making out to be a good series.
I'm very excited. And right before this series started, Kyrie Irving came out and said, I don't know why Celtics fans are so mad at me. I think we should just look at my highlights from my time we was there. After the logo stomping, the refusing to play, all this bullshit. And, he says that. And today he flipped off the fans in TD Garden.
Yeah.
But guess what? They didn't give a shit because they won. And Kyrie Irving can suck on these nuts. If you like them replays, how about these nuts, bro?
Yeah, I mean, Kyrie Irving is another player like James Harden that has burned every team he's been on. I mean, he went out when he was on the Celtics. He says, I plan to re-sign here if you guys will have me back. I'm really excited about re-signing. Boom. No, I'm going to go be with my buddy Kevin Durant on the Nets and be a super team after being injured and not playing for you guys that you built your whole team around me.
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been a grudge match series in the making, and Celtics fans are going to be asses in seats for every game. And this first game, I haven't watched the other games, but I watched a little bit of this one, and I can't imagine any of the other matchups being this electric. And it's funny that we have a Red Sox White Sox podcast in this series. The first round of the NBA playoffs is going to be a great Chicago-Milwaukee series and a great Boston New York series. I think the irony is hilarious.
I agree. It's perfect. It was destiny. And I mean, there's got to be some burgeoning hatred between these teams. If you remember last year, the Celtics got eliminated by the Nets in the playoffs in 6 games. And now this time around, the Celtics are the favorites over the Nets. So it'll definitely be exciting. Moving over to the Western Conference. Oh, ironic it is. Yes.
Ironic.
Moving over to the Western Conference, we have the Suns, the 1-seeded Suns playing the 8-seeded Pelicans. Look, I don't have much to say about the Suns other than they are the best team in the NBA. The Suns have been unbelievably dominant this year. It's not easy to have over 60 wins in a season in an 82-game season, but they did it.
Isn't Chris Paul out though now?
Did that happen in the game today? We were recording.
No, it didn't happen in the game today,
so I didn't get to watch it. Yeah, so I watched all the playoff games except the Pelicans Suns game because again we were recording. And no, he played
okay, so never mind. He's fine. So never mind. The Pelicans are fucked.
Yeah, I mean the Pelicans they had a historically bad start to the season. They were 1-12 in their first 13 games, and basically because they dealt with all this drama around Zion. They were like, Zion Williamson, our young player, we're building our team around, is injured. We're just going to tread water till he comes back. Then Zion, he couldn't stay in shape. He re-aggravated his injury because he couldn't stay in shape. He was not communicating with the team. He was called a detached teammate by JJ Redick. He was, he didn't have a very good relationship with the team this year. So the team was like, fuck it, we ball. They're like, we're going to do it without Zion. And they bought at the deadline, even though they had this terrible start to the season. And they went on this insane run.
And now they're in the playoffs.
They fought their way into the 9 seed, won the play-in. They beat the they beat the Spurs, and then they beat the Clippers, who Paul George tested positive for COVID that morning. So otherwise they probably wouldn't have beat the Clippers. But hey, they fought for it, and this is huge for them. That being said, with all the magic that the Pelicans had today in the first game, the Suns handily beat the Pelicans 110-99. Yeah, I mean, it's been a great story for the Pelicans.
I want the Pelicans. Honestly, I want the Pelicans to go all the way. If I'm being honest, that's my Western Conference pick. Even though they won't, but oh man, it just sucks because they get into play and they do all this shit, and then they have to walk into fucking Phoenix and just look at the best team under the sun, literally, and just be like, well, shit, bro, BP wins again.
I hope the Pelicans somehow win a game. But even that seems like that will be tough. I mean, these Suns were just nobody could reliably beat them this year.
Anyway,
go ahead.
On to the next one. Dallas versus Utah.
Oh, yeah. So Dallas, Utah, 4-5 matchup. Look, interesting. A lot of people love the Mavericks. I'm not actually really a fan of the Mavericks. I don't really like the way they play all that much. I don't really like Luka. I feel like oh man, I'm going to get so much hate from NBA fans for saying that. People love Luka. They love to dub him as he's dubbed as, I call him the young GOAT because that's what everybody else, how they treat him. They act like he's going to be the next GOAT. But I just don't, whenever I watch him in a game, he's incredible. Don't get me wrong. He's incredible. And overall, Luka's a good guy. I like him as a person, but I think he does put the team on his back, but he doesn't always put the team first. And he's so whiny. He's so whiny and bitchy every single game I watch him in. Whether it's against the Bulls, whether it's against someone else, he's so whiny and bitchy. But, I mean, hey, he led this Mavericks to a 4 seed. Spencer Dinwiddie helped out a lot after the trade deadline. But, I mean, he got injured. And he's probably going to be out for the first at least 2 games of this series. But it's possible he's out for the whole series. That looms large. Meanwhile, the Jazz are a team that are in the decline of their window. They're in a really interesting place. Last year, they were the 1 seed. They had all this hype, an embarrassing postseason, and they've just disappointed their fans in the postseason repeatedly 2 years in a row. And so a lot is on the line. People are saying that if the Jazz don't do something really good this postseason, that team is getting broken up. Coaches, star players, everything. So, I mean, the Mavs did shockingly well in game 1. The Jazz still won it, but barely. The Mavs led for a bunch of it. And it's going to be hard for the Mavs to win without Luka. But this is definitely a series that really matters, especially for the Jazz's future.
So this is the other series other than Philly and Toronto that the betting circles at work been talking about. And my advice to the betting circles at work, which I will echo just like the Philly one, is that Dallas is gritty. They're a gritty team, and Utah are a bunch of Mormons. So, I mean, you do the math. And you may say that's bad betting advice, but I've heard way worse. All right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny enough because, I mean, well, I wouldn't say, Utah are a bunch of Mormons. The Utah Jazz, other than Donovan Mitchell, really have a problem with clutch time, playing hard and playing serious and playing gritty. I mean, you have a superstar on a max contract in Rudy Gobert, who, don't get me wrong, is probably the best defender in the NBA year in and year out. But him or Kawhi Leonard probably right now. But, I mean, he took 1 shot, I think, in the first half. And you have a guy on a max contract and a perpetual all-star taking 1 shot in the first half. I get you're there to get rebounds and defense. I mean, come on.
Your defense can never be that good.
I know. If you're,
literally, that's like him and Ben Simmons, man.
I know. You just run, but it's different because Ben Simmons' whole issue is he lacks confidence. Rudy Gobert has so much confidence. He's kind of arrogant.
Classic Frenchman.
Yeah. I honestly, and he for real. And he talks shit about Americans a lot too.
Oh my God.
He just sometimes, look, I've heard that maybe this is unfair and it's just his style of play looks like this, but it's impossible to watch him play and not feel like he lacks effort or he is not putting the same amount of energy as like Donovan Mitchell or other guys on the court are.
Unfortunate for him, but that's the way it is. But in either case, Mavs in 7.
Yeah, I think the Mavs will win this too, especially, I mean, when Luka comes back, especially. I mean, if Luka doesn't come back, I'm going to give it to the Jazz, but I think the Mavs will still win some games without the Jazz. I think either way, I'm going to say it's 6. 6, Mavs in 6 if Luka comes back, because I think they'll just win every game when Luka comes back. Jazz in 6 if Luka isn't back. Next series, we have the 3-seeded Warriors versus the 6-seeded Nuggets. This is interesting. The Warriors commandingly won game 1, very commandingly. But let's talk about the Nuggets. They are the Nikola Jokic show. I love Jokic. Okay, I think he's the first true great point center. He is a center that is a ball handler. He broke the NBA record. He was the first one to ever get so many points, rebounds, and assists. He's a center that can get more assists than many guards in the league, most guards in the league. And he can reliably get triple doubles as a center. He has done everything he's done this season, fought to get the Nuggets in 6th seed with on a bench that includes his second and third best guys on his team, including a second all-star level player on a max contract. They have a max contract who's been sidelined this whole year, and he's gotten them to the 6th seed. And look, something that I think, obviously, the Nuggets are underdogs, but people got to keep in mind in the season series, Nuggets versus Warriors this year, remember, the Nuggets have not had Jamal Murray the entire season. They're number 2. the Nuggets won 3 of the 4 games against the Warriors in the season series. That's something I feel like people aren't talking about enough. But ultimately, this is the Golden State Warriors. Go ahead.
I will say that I know you're about to hype up the Golden State Warriors, but what I will say is this is the season of the death to goats. All right. LeBron took his L. KD is about to take his L, and Steph Curry better believe the L is coming. Whether
you're all
about
killing the old guard right now.
In the first round or the second round, it's coming.
I
don't know if Denver's got the stuff. I mean, it seems like they're a little light on their feet, but I mean, like, talk about the Golden State Warriors and people.
Look, this is the Golden State Warriors. This Golden State Warriors, they have right now. I mean, granted, he's hurt on a minutes restriction, just coming back from injuries. They have, these Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr at head coach. I mean, these guys were one of the greatest dynasties in the NBA. Okay, obviously, I don't think they were up. They obviously weren't up there with the. I'm just going to say it. They weren't up there with like the old Celtics, Lakers, and Bulls dynasty. But if you look, they're probably the next one. They are incredible. They won 3 championships. They went to the finals 5 years in a row. 5 years in a row. Incredible. And sure, they don't have KD anymore. Their super team aspect broke up. But I mean, these guys were there without KD also. Yeah. Multiple times. And so, I mean, you can never count these guys out in the playoffs.
They're like a humble Lakers with a good coach. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think ultimately I love the Nuggets. I think Jokic should be MVP. I love Jokic. I'm going to say Warriors in 6, but I put this one at a way higher chance of an upset in Nuggets winning the series than I think people realize.
Okay. I would agree with that. And now for our boy, says who?
Sean and I have been following Ja Morant
ever since he had that fucking commercial.
Yeah, in the first week of the season, there was just, I don't know what it was, but the streaming service Sean and I were using to watch NBA games, they just would, every commercial break, run this Ja Morant ad talking about, he's put a small city on the map. They said the NBA couldn't succeed in Tennessee. Blah, blah, blah. They said all this shit about Ja, and they'd keep going, says who, is what the ad would say. They go, says who? They go, you can't have a NBA team win in a small market.
Says who?
Ja, isn't as good as the other players of his age.
Says who?
And it was just so, the Grizzlies aren't contenders.
Says who?
Yeah, so Sean and I developed an appreciation for Ja and the Grizzlies from that ad for the says who. And look,
and then we watched Ja play, and it was fucking spectacular.
Incredible. They were the most electric team to watch the NBA this season. They were the most fun to watch of any team. Like, the plays they were doing is incredible. And, it is very similar to, and this is not just my Chicago talking. If you look, non-Bulls fans, national media says this, the guy he's most similar to is when D Rose was in his prime, Derrick Rose. It's all about that kind of flashy rim attacking and laying up these cool shots and stuff. And these dunks he's getting as this little guy. Ja, though, much like Derrick Rose, faced a lot of injuries this season. And I think if you look, as a thought experiment, I would, if you are interested, those of you listening, you guys should just look up Derrick Rose dunk compilation and just watch a couple clips. Watch how he lands. He lands all on one foot. He's this short guy. He's doing these insane verticals, short by NBA standards, verticals for dunks. And then he's landing in this like showy way on one foot. That fucked up his knee and fucked up his career. If you look at Ja Morant dunk compilations. He lands almost the same way. So that's my worry for Ja Morant. Aside from that, though, these Grizzlies are electric. And then T-Wolves, though, who they're going up against, 7th-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves. Look, they have also been a really fun story. They were a failing franchise for most of their history. They were always known as a place where people go to just kind of like sim years of their career almost. You should, even like in the 90s, you can listen to players do interviews where they talk about going to Minnesota. They're like, if you're on Minnesota, you don't actually, the team's culture isn't to win, it's to just go party, travel, do whatever. The franchise doesn't really even care about it. And so, they had KG, of course, Celtics fame, Kevin Garnett there for a while, and he made them good a little bit. They had Jimmy Butler for 1 year, but he didn't mesh with that culture because he's a grinder, but he got them to the playoffs. But this year, getting Patrick Beverley they've actually changed their culture. So even though it's a lot of the same players for one, Jimmy Butler was there and he had all this toxicity because he took it more seriously is the way I think. I mean, a lot of people don't side with Jimmy Butler in that. I do. I think he just took it more seriously than like Wiggins and Cat did. But now the Timberwolves are grinding, and if you looked at their play-in win over the Clippers, it was electric. It was a lot of fun, and they insanely took game 1 from the Memphis Grizzlies, who many people have to win. It was a great game, and it was a huge upset.
So, see, for me, I actually think the Timberwolves are going to win this series.
I don't think that's out of the realm of the possibility.
And here's the thing: Timberwolves are going to go balls to the wall. That's just the team they are. And the one thing is that Ja, while I love the guy, I'm the motherfucker that says who. All right, because he does these awesome dunks, and I love watching him. But most of the time, like he puts up good numbers, but like he'll have highlight reels of him like they'll show every single dunk, and then it'll be like 22 points.
This is true.
So he can have the coolest dunk possible, but if he's not scoring that much, I don't know the teams very well, but who else on Memphis is going to be able to drop 30 respectively? Because that's what they need in the playoffs.
I agree. I mean, Ja, if you look, I mean, Ja is one of these guys where when you watch his games, like Sean's saying, you think, oh man, this guy must be gotten 30 plus points. If you look, it's only like 20 something. If you look, people are saying he should be in the MVP conversation. I think he should win most improved player. I mean, he's been great this year, but I mean, if you actually look at his numbers, they are certainly not, I don't think they're at MVP level.
The only part of the team that's on his back is their Twitter page.
Yeah.
Like that's the way it is. But I don't know what else your final thoughts are about this, but I think it'd be fun if the Timberwolves won at least.
I'm actually gonna say this is my over Nets Celtics, which is my second place. This is my series to watch in the first round. I just think these games are gonna be so much fun. These games are gonna be so great. These games are just gonna be electric, and it's extra important because this is the future of the NBA. These two teams feel like they're the future of the NBA. You got Ja, you got Anthony Edwards, who Ja Morant and Anthony Edwards in game 1 were the first time in NBA history 2 players under 22 dueled and both had 30 points. I mean, these guys are young. They both had 30 points. And I mean, like I said, if you want to watch something that's going to be like fun, electric, young, energetic, and the future of the NBA, this is my series for you.
Yeah, I agree. Future of the league probably in this game a lot more than any of the other ones because, like I said, death to the GOATs this year. But Memphis and the T-Wolves are looking pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, do you have any concluding thoughts or comments or what do you think the finals is going to be? Who's going to win it and how many games?
I mean, I think Phoenix is going to be in the finals. I don't really understand how they couldn't be. I mean,
I agree.
That's sort of like in hockey, not picking the Panthers to be in the finals is another kind of just like you're joking if you don't from the Pacific. In the East, I mean, I feel awkward if I say Boston, but they're not going to lose to Brooklyn.
They go against the Bucks, assuming the Bucks beat the Bulls in the next round.
To be honest, I think it's going to be the Bucks or Boston, and I would say that probably Boston. If maybe somebody gets a little extra dinged up in that Milwaukee series against the Bulls, you never know what's gonna happen. It's a professional game. Anything can happen out there. I'm just saying, like one loose leg, maybe
it's over.
Down.
Giannis. I don't know if anyone on the Bulls could even injure Giannis if they wanted, like could beat up on him.
Oh my God, dude's a specimen. But yeah, so I think it's gonna be Suns or one of the 2 green teams.
Pick one. So Celtics.
Oh, it's Boston. Well, I'm not going to pick a team over the Celtics, but
all right, so
I will have my caveat.
Who wins? How many games? Be honest here. I know it might pain you. Just give your real opinion.
It is probably Phoenix in 6.
Yeah.
However, if Phoenix wins 3 games, the first 3 games, Celtics in 7, easy.
Wow, you think Celtics are gonna have just win the next 4 games if Phoenix wins the first 3?
Hey man, it's that Boston Magic, the fuck you energy.
I love that. I agree. Fuck you energy. I agree. That's special. Yep. That would be. Imagine how embarrassing that would be for the Suns. They have their best year in franchise history. They get to the finals. They get a 3-0 lead, and then they lost. That would be insane. I personally have Suns Bucks. I mean, of course, I hope the Bulls upset the Bucks, but
we're both close. Yeah,
I have Suns Bucks. I think it's going to come down to that second round series, the Bucks, and I think the Bucks are going to win that series in 6. But I think the Suns will beat the Bucks in 6.
Little do we know that it's going to be Pelicans and Bulls in the end.
Yeah, baby. I would love it because the Bulls would win a championship then.
All right. This has been our special episode about the NBA playoffs. We'll be doing another one for the NHL playoffs a little later on. Our normal Sox Talk podcast and Sox on Both P podcast is going to be putting up episodes about baseball. But we're always going to have these special episodes for when cool stuff's happening in other leagues. I've been Sean.
I've been Zach. And we want to do these a little more casual, a little more fun, more conversational, these special bonus ones. So I hope you guys enjoyed.